Welcome Leo to your in-depth monthly forecast for November 2026. I'm going to share with you first of all some of the big themes of the month, then on screen your event chart as November begins always provides an influential backdrop for the whole period. I'll then go through each of the influences in detail to give you a clear picture of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell, a very warm welcome. I have noticed that over 50% of people who regularly watch my videos are not subscribers. If that's you, please help the channel to continue to thrive and do so now. But please also click or tap the bell notification symbol. You can watch your year 2026 Leo deep dive forecast by clicking on the link beneath this video too. Get the inside track on the exciting developments, particularly with Jupiter arriving in your sign at the end of June, which could prove to be really exhilarating. So Leo, you can be one of the most sparkling, engaging and personable members of the zodiac, and there are going to be opportunities as November unfolds to demonstrate your charisma, turn it up to max in fact, particularly over the last 10 days or so. But it's also important to know that there is a lot of influence in the more emotional, psychological parts of your situation. Being in touch with our intuition is something that many of us at times can struggle with because we're caught up in the achieving of life or getting things done in a more functional way, a more practical way, and that doesn't always give us the space just to let things work through us, to digest things, process them. And that's really what you're asked to do. And there is a lot of retrograde activity that I'm going to share with you. But before I do, I'd just like to tell you about my unique special offer. You can order your personal forecast for year 2026, totally individual to you. You can order that now, get the rest of this year free, but also with my special package, get 30% off in your Life Roadmap Report. For me, the Life Roadmap Report, the natal chart, the Radax interpretation is the most powerful document any of us will ever read, because understanding the patterns that are played out in our lives all the way through our lives helps us to work future forwards in a much more effective way. But in that special package of 30% off, you'll also get your free gift of a general zodiac, a love zodiac, an Indian zodiac and a Chinese zodiac forecast booklets, which will be sent to you with the chart. Please see the link below for more. So on the screen now, we have your event chart as the month begins. Your ruler is in the sign of Scorpio, along with Mars, the sun. But look at the position of the moon in Pisces. So both the sun and the moon are in a perfect trine, but both in water signs. The fourth house is very much about our instincts, atmospheres, protectiveness and nurture. The moon in the eighth house can be very psychic actually. It can tend to nudge a few anxieties to the surface. But I think for you, the moon there is just asking you in your connections, you're wanting true meaningfulness. And yet, we do have the angle between Uranus and Mercury, which is very electrifying, very restless, and could push you in some ways to do something much more social. And that's going to build up in intensity once Mars moves into Sagittarius, your sister fire sign, on the 4th. But just look at the position of Venus. Venus is the relator and is at home in Libra, so that's gorgeous. And it means the way you express yourself will have extra luster. But look also at the position of Saturn. Saturn can be very resistant energy. It's in the 8th house. If a connection that you're in isn't feeling quite as deep and fulfilled as it could be, even though Venus is very conversational in Libra, you may become much more aware that that is something you desire. Now, if you are in a much freer part of your life, the arrival of Mars in the sign of Sagittarius on the 4th really is very exciting, and it's forging a brilliant link to Pluto in your sector of relationships. So don't be surprised if something really quite exciting does spark off at that time. But the full moon on the 5th in the sign of Taurus is going to see your emotions quite close to the surface. Now, because you can be quite proud, it's not always easy for you if you feel that people can observe your vulnerabilities. But the work-life balance that many of us struggle with these days could be a factor over the next 2 weeks. But essentially, I feel that that full moon, the full moon in Taurus, it's a great place for the moon to be actually. It's exalted there. It's also perhaps asking you around family or emotional dynamics to take the lead if something isn't quite working as you want. Now on the 6th, Venus moves into the part of your chart, into the sign of Scorpio, which is excellent if you do want to get some decoration done. And if you are a maker or a creator, that's a lovely position for Venus to be in as well. But if there are any politics in a personal relationship, even if someone is telling you perhaps the things that seem okay, if you've got some concerns about where they're coming from, that's where I feel it's important to tune into your instincts through this month. Now, Uranus returns back to Taurus for one final visit, which will complete its 84-year cycle towards the end of April. And if you haven't quite found your niche when it comes to your professional or work situation, that is a cosmic window of opportunity, but it may mean you being open to change or doing something completely different. And if you are a Leo, and often Leos are, that have a preference for sticking to what you know, that can be a bit of a challenge. Now on the 9th, Mercury in your sister fire sign of Sagittarius goes into its 3rd retrograde of the year. It's not particularly happy in Sagittarius Mercury in some ways, but it's very playful. It just means that maybe some dates that you're planning, some meetups socially, might be changed at the last minute. But on the 11th, Jupiter, the planet of growth, optimism and good fortune, goes into a retrograde for 4 months in the more psychological part of your chart. Now, he is going to be connecting with Saturn and Venus before the month is out, and also the new moon. So don't see this retrograde as being an entirely challenging thing. Pluto is the biggest planet after the Sun, which is technically known as a lunary, and Jupiter is about where we expand. And since early June, Jupiter's been asking you to tune into a more thoughtful part of your situation. You may have become much more conscious of different ways of approaching your health, your psychological health, or even healing. But Jupiter retrograde just is going to make you even more thoughtful about those areas through to March the 11th next year. But on the 12th, a glorious link, despite Mercury's retrograde with Mars, is a great chance for you to be charismatic, effervescent and punchy all at the same time. You might even find yourself connecting to someone that you thought, well, you wouldn't connect them again, and it could actually be something that can be resolved between you. But on the 19th, Mercury inverses back into Scorpio, so those home strands that Venus is asking you to grapple with, along with the Sun, that could be something that comes more sharply into focus. If you are in the process of trying to rent or buy a property, there may be some delays which are proving frustrating. But the new moon of the 20th, as I mentioned before, is a really lovely new moon. It is true that the moon in Scorpio is in her full, so for the moon not the strongest, but for you, because the Sun is your ruler, and when the Sun and the moon combine, they're collaborating, and the energy of Jupiter and Saturn, despite their retrogrades, suggests that if you are wanting to reform your emotional perspectives in some ways, or forge connections with people that are deeper and more gratifying, the next 4 weeks can be significant. But that more playful part of your nature certainly gets an opportunity to come out to play in a more fulsome way from the 22nd. The Sun moves into Sagittarius, but also he forges a terrific link to Pluto in your sector of relating. The 5th house can be about romance. The 7th house, where Pluto is, about partnership. If there is someone that you have that emotional bond with, but you also have that spark, that arc of attraction and magnetism, which is so important, that relationship could really go somewhere. The 28th also sees Saturn end a retrograde. If you have been struggling with your financial situation this year, and especially around a business, long-term investment, squeezing the most on your resources, shared finances too, anything to do with pensions and savings, you've been really trying to find different ways to squeeze more from them. I think Saturn going forwards will be very helpful. Now at this point of the month, Saturn and Jupiter and Venus forge a ground water trine. So early in the month, it's the thrust of Mars in your emotional zone. Later in the month, it's the feeling and more coquettish energies of Venus. And then on the 29th, Mercury in Scorpio goes direct. Hopefully, if you have had some hassles around anything you're trying to get done around a property matter, it's resolved. But the 30th, Venus sashays into Sagittarius, joining up with the Sun, but also with Mars. And I can tell you that as you go into December, you're going to be much more outgoing. But that doesn't mean to say that November has a downside. It's just encouraging you as a passionate, proactive person to, in some ways, accept that sensitivities and vulnerabilities are just part of who all we are. And if some things come up or you become more attuned to the things that hold greater resonance for you at a deeper level, that's a wonderful development that's emerging for you. But you are going to have the chance to be much more playful as the month comes to a close and start to get into the spirit of any festive gatherings and get-togethers. Thank you so much for joining me, Leo. Please check out your year 2026 deep dive forecast below too.